When there's a concern that somebody is hiding assets, there's a lot that we can do to try to uncover that. The first thing we're going to do, however, is figure out, is it worth spending the time and money to look? And many times I've had people come in who are worried about hidden assets, and yet when we look at what their income is, what they're netting, and what their expenditures are, it becomes pretty clear that there's not going to be hidden assets. That if anything, they're running at a deficit, they're running up debt, and the likelihood of finding anything of real value is slim, if highly improbable, and the cost of looking is going to be quite significant. There are times, however, where there's a lot of red flags. When we look at, again, when we're looking at people's finances, when we look at the statement of net worth, this document that every client in New York State that gets a divorce is required by the courts to complete, and we see that they should be accumulating a lot more assets, we think, than what they have based on their lifestyle, based on their income, then we start looking. We can look at this, all the statements. So getting documentation is really important because often you'll see some sort of leakage. You'll see money coming out of accounts that either is going to accounts that have not been disclosed, which is the simplest thing to find, takes time. You need to know to look. You need to know what you're looking for. But that's one of the common ways that we'll catch things. When the client thinks that something's missing, or when we see some red flags, some of the tricks that we can use to start getting a handle on things and finding out, is there something missing? And then we can decide, is this something that we can uncover? Is this something that we need to bring in forensic accountants for, and where to go from there? Quite frequently, we'll find that people will omit assets out of sloppiness. Certainly sometimes they're hiding things, but sometimes they'll just forget. You'll have people that have accounts in many different places, that have assets that they have long forgotten about, and that's something that we need to be attuned to. And similarly, as when we believe that something is intentionally hidden, so too in these circumstances, sometimes it becomes obvious pretty quickly. Again, when we're looking at account statements and we're seeing money moving to places that were not otherwise disclosed, when we, in the appropriate cases, when we depose people, when we're asking them questions under oath about their finances, things will come up and you'll realize, hey, wait a second, that was never disclosed before. And that's a problem. And you certainly never want to do that intentionally. You don't want to be caught doing that. And if it's happening unintentionally, it's critical that we find it, particularly if you're the spouse whose name is not on those accounts. So there are times that we do need to bring in forensic accountants. That can be costly and it can take quite a bit of time. The biggest part of that is getting the documentation. And that's something that clients can really be helpful with. Often, in advance, when people say to me, I'm thinking about getting divorced, what should I do in preparation for it? We say, to the extent that you can start accumulating account statements, that would be great. And that will make a real difference in how quickly we can move your matter forward and how much it'll cost. Look, we can always subpoena banks for their records, but that also takes time and is costly. So the more that the client has, the easier it is. And if they can't get it, that's okay. We're certainly well equipped to track things down, as appropriate. When people have intentionally hid assets, there can be severe consequences, but no guarantee. Judges certainly will look poorly upon somebody who has hidden their assets, and there are times that can be meaningful. Certainly, if a case is going to trial, if a judge needs to make a decision on a matter, and somebody has presented with unclean hands, has made everybody's life more difficult, made the judge's life more difficult, then a judge has a lot of leeway to hurt that person in any ultimate decision that the judge may make. So that's one way that it comes up. The other way that it comes up is it exposes people to the risk that they'll be ordered, the person who's hiding the money, that they'll be ordered to pay counsel fees to the other person. And then depending on whether they've broken, if there's been a court order that they've disobeyed, it can subject them to a contempt application. Most of those things we prefer to avoid. You don't get too excited if you think that you've caught your spouse and they're going to get hurt. All of this costs money. All of this takes time. And leaving something in the hands of a judge to decide is never ideal. When hidden assets come up, when people ask me about it, the advice is, if you're the one who's contemplating hiding assets, don't do it. Big mistake, can be very costly. Am I going to swear that you'll always get caught? No, I won't, but I will tell you that there's a good chance you will get caught. There's a good chance that if you do, and even if you're going to complicate the divorce, you're going to make it much harder and more expensive to resolve. So from that standpoint, we urge our clients, full disclosure. You're required to do so. We're certainly not going to help you in hiding assets. And if you tell us about it, we have an obligation, more or less, to let the court know. So don't do it. As far as if you think your spouse is hiding assets, much of the time, maybe even most of the time, we're going to be able to find it. Can I promise you that people never get away with it? No, we can't promise you that. I can tell you that to the extent that it can be found, we're going to find it. But be assured that anything possible to locate those things, when it makes sense financially, we'll do that for you.